Please interrupt me, or maybe questions at the end is also good. I don't really see any of you right now. If I have my screen open, if I move my screen, it's fine too, right? You don't get dizzy if I move things back and forth. Just tell me if it becomes.
But you're not in the screen share mode, like we can see the PowerPoint interface. I don't know if that's intended.
Let me see.
I think it's fine. We can see it, just to let you know.
Can you see it? Okay. I will.
Yeah, on the bottom. Yeah, exactly. On the right, not that, on the right. Yeah, on the right.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Better?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't see any of you right now. So you know, just call out if I need a pause. As mentioned, this was the first phase in this multi-year initiative. All right, I'm sure Clara has mentioned the FINDHR group and how we have been organizing ourselves. As a little bit about me, I've spent more than 15 years in tech. I'm still actually in tech. I co-founded and run currently a deep tech company here in Berlin, where I'm based. And Impact Mania is an initiative that I have led many years across many continents. So this is how I work for a lot of organizations, and that is the intersect of technology and humanity, right? So social sciences. So this is what we were set out to do. As a preface, again, it was a very short timeline, 4 to 5 months, and it was a very small set of participants. So even in this short amount of time, we were able to really support all the findings that have been out there in very more extensive research that have been done by other organizations and research institutes. And there are some original findings that we found which were quite surprising and some alarming. And I will share these with you today. So what we did basically was, let me start first with the labor market. Just a little bit of, and you probably know this, but if you look at the labor market, it's really not that alarming, because it is really split between male, female, 47, 48%, depending on where you are. I'm in Germany, so it's quite 50-50. But unfortunately, the majority of female and migrants workers are in surplus occupations. So it makes them very vulnerable as workers. So as you all know, right, in Germany, for example, there's more than 2.5 million people needed in the workforce, whereas there's even more workers sitting on the sideline. This is obviously not only because of AI hiring systems, but because there's a mismatch between the skills we need and the vacancies that are open. Unfortunately, as you probably know, AI hiring tools do not take transferable skills into account. And so we're advocating for, can we look into matching people into the system versus matching people out, right? This is not one of our findings, but you probably also have read this all over the news. If you are equally qualified, but you're female and you have a foreign name, it means fewer interviews. And that is aggravated if you are female and then, intersectional, bias and discrimination. So female and older, female and, with families, female career gap, you name it, right? Or female and migrant. So this is all compiled into a challenging situation for people accessing the labor market. So what we found in some of the stress tests we conducted is that ATS systems can favor category C candidates while they exclude category A candidates. So the top applicants sometimes do not come forward in the ranking, but somehow the system picks basically, the ones that do not match as well for the job. And we will dive into this. I think you will also cover this. This was a Harvard report on the hidden workforce. And I've lived in many different countries, and I have firsthand seen this all over. It's not just in Europe, but also in the US, that I'm part of organizations, right, companies and nonprofit organizations that are saying, gosh, we can't find people, or we can't find a diverse a pipeline of workers. But then, you know, in the afternoon, in the same community, I would run into people who say, I can't access the workforce. Somehow, no matter what I do, I have no way in even securing interviews. So there's really limited access for them. So what we did in the first phase of the project was we spoke with talent acquisition leaders. These were one-on-one interviews. We spoke with, for example, we actually worked with the VP of Diversity and Inclusion and Hiring at Deutsche Telekom. She was part of the project. Then we also interviewed the TA leader at Adidas, Siemens Energy, and a few tech companies. And then we spoke with a number of AI experts, predominantly in the UK, where they're a little bit further along, and mostly in the US, because most packages, except for SuccessFactors, which belongs to SAP, right, is German. Most of the talent tech software packages come from the US. So we spoke with a few renowned startups. The founders of those startups typically come from, you know, you can guess, the Google, the, you know, Amazon, the Microsofts. For example, one of them is named Seekout, and that's a really advanced talent tech system. So not only just ATS, but even beyond that. So they look into using AI for, okay, who do we now train in our employee group, who is up for promotion, and who gets paid what. So this is what they already are looking at. So then we worked with 88 job applicants. We asked them to submit their resume for a project. This was a project manager position. They all obviously knew they were part of this project, and was across gender, across, you know, native, international group. And so these were some of the questions. I will just skip through these. And these were some of the interviews and focus groups we did. And across gender, across ethnicity, they were all frustrated with the process of applying online. No one said this is like, you know, a pleasant experience. So it really didn't matter where you came from, what kind of level, if you were a senior worker, experienced worker. Everybody were most frustrated with, I have no idea what happens after I apply. Sometimes I never hear anything until 3 months later. Sometimes I hear instantly that I am not, you know, a right fit. And I know obviously nobody read my resume. So there were a lot of complaints about this whole process. Now, the big difference was between kind of the native kind of workers. When we asked them how many applications did you send in, right? They said, oh, many. They all said, oh, many. But then for the, you know, the workforce here, it was mainly, they meant many, 20 to 30. But then we had people who would send in hundreds of resumes, right? Hundreds of job applications. And they would hear very little back. So this was mainly the frustration. We actually found people who changed their names. We had actually one person who legally changed her name in order to be successful in this process. And you notice obviously a big difference in even being asked for interviews. And she has a brother and who refuses to change his name. And he, this is relayed by her. She now has a really a wonderful job, is very happy in her career, but she said because her brother is refusing to change his names, he always is having job after job that's been offered that is really below his kind of, you know, university level and his desired kind of career track. So you see a lot of that. Then we spoke even with people who in Germany, it's really puzzling to me because there's actually photos still on resumes, which in the US that's not allowed. And we had a candidate who has a very Western sounding name. So it's Peter something, right? And he had a photo and never received any reply or, you know, positive responses. And the minute he took his photo off the resume, he received a number of replies for an interview, for an invitation to an interview. But then obviously, being African American, that then didn't work because, you know, at some point you need to show up for an interview. So we had a follow-up with him even after the project, and he has since left the country. So we have seen these kind of things happening too. So what did we do? So it was a qualitative and a quantitative experiment that we ran. And so the quantitative experiments, we took the 88 resumes and we asked Aisha, who is the VP of diversity at Deutsche Telekom and the head of hiring, to go through these resumes like she and her team would review them. So she manually actually went through the resumes and she would select the top candidates. So this was a manual process. Obviously, she was very mindful, right? So we had no, I can't really say that with the pipeline, it was very much, how do you say this? Like, so it mirrored very much the pipeline. So what the outcome of diverse presentation to the hiring manager was reflected in also the pipeline. So if you had a mix of male, female, and a mix of different ethnicities, that came kind of out in the top 10 candidates. So they were not overriding one way or the other. That was expected, of course, because she's DNI, right? So I think she was more mindful of this. The interesting thing was that she dismissed two of the candidates because she said they were overqualified. So even obviously a bias is not just, as you know, in systems, but definitely in humans. And this was a finding of that you see this a lot with talent acquisition managers, that they say, okay, well, they probably want a higher salary. They're overqualified. They probably will get bored with the work or whatever excuse there is, right? So they get dismissed already. Then we heard from a lot of talent acquisition leaders that no matter how diverse the top candidates are, and they're really doing their best in presenting the hiring managers a set of very qualified but diverse group, the hiring managers typically go for, you know, who they're familiar with. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. So then we took the 88 resumes and then we tried to put them through a different ATS software. And that was very, very challenging because one, they are all black boxes, right? So even if we would have a package, we would really not know or could gauge how what happened in the system. So we then opted for an open source system. So we had a better view of, you know, this is what we fed the system and this is what came out, and we could actually look into the system. I've worked with a CEO of Upati, which is he's a data scientist and he's actually a founder of an AI software platform, not hiring, but for manufacturing. But we worked with a number of data scientists. So we did this on ATS here in Germany. Then we took those 88 resumes with synthetic data, synthetic actually resumes, and we ran them through a proprietary AI system that is of people I know in the UK, because I couldn't find anybody really in Germany who could actually help me do this. So this then was done, and we did kind of automated kind of scoring, like an ATS system in the UK with new data. So as you see, of the 88 resumes, 14 were selected. The 2 were dismissed because they were overqualified. So we came up with category A, B, and C, as you typically would if you're a talent acquisition leader. And then we looked into what then comes out of the ATS software platforms. Is that, is that similar? Is that very different? And this was the biggest finding. And that was, even if, because a lot of software packages say, we don't look at names anymore, so you don't have to worry that if you have a foreign sounding name, you won't be dismissed based on that. But unfortunately, what we found was you still have, overseas work experience and international education. And we found that you were graded differently if there was an international education. So that was problematic. So then the big finding was that if you have 2 systems with the same resumes that go in for the same job, so for example, Amazon or a company is hiring, it's a global company, they have in the UK a system, the same system, a software platform as in Germany, the same candidate applies, you will have a different outcome. So you could be category A in Germany, but then for the same job in a different country, you would be category C. And so this happens because, of course, as we all now know, it all depends on the underlying data, right? So how did the machine learn? And what we found in the UK was that it was actually in your favor if you were from South Asian descent, predominantly Indian population. They actually had a higher scoring than obviously if the same resume went into systems here in Germany. So that was very striking to us. We had an advisor as part of the group from Amazon, and all our advisors obviously are not paid. That would be a conflict. And he confirmed that this is what, this is what's happening in systems right now. So we have some recommendations. It's a 102 page report. There's recommendations for corporations, for policymakers, and for job applicants. Here's some of the most critical ones. We absolutely need transparency in the software packages. We need to also be very clear to job applicants that companies, when they're hiring, that they're using AI and how they use AI, because it's just very puzzling to people what really happens and how they are being assessed. And then long-term recommendations for policymaker is really we need to ensure that the people who build these platforms have periodic audits, so stress tests like we did. We heard from most companies that build these platforms, they currently do this stress test, but that's not more than once a year, and that's not sufficient. So that's really in a nutshell, in summary. For us, the biggest finding is, we need a diverse and inclusive talent pool that actually built these systems and a part of, every seat at the table as stakeholder, whether it's on the hiring end or on the software end. And so this is not a only tech issue, right? It is basically a human issue because the data obviously came from what we have fed the machine and how the machine is learning over time. And so this will not get better unless we all work together in being mindful on how we build the tech. So that's basically it. This was the team. This was the core team. As you can see, Michael was from Amazon, Aisha is from Deutsche Telekom, and then we have a lot of data scientists that were involved. And Aurelie is an ex-Nike Adidas leader. So this is it's a little bit weird if I don't see people. So I'm glad let me stop this.
Yes, thank you very much. So here's another short poll. After we've kind of heard Paxi explain her experiment, I would be interested to know if you've ever encountered this kind of ATS or resume screening technology as a candidate. You can again use the WooClap and enter the code that's written there. The first person has answered. Okay, so it's looking like many of you have already experienced this. I think somebody wants to come in. Daniela, I'm going to let them in, right? Ah, okay, you already did. Thank you. Great. Okay. Maybe one of two of you who clicked yes, who've already experienced it, or maybe one person, if you could share your experience, that would be great. Like, was it positive? Was it negative? Did you get the job? And then after, I'd also love to hear from somebody who clicked I'm not sure, because I think those are the interesting categories here. Okay, yes, Werner.
Was once I'm quite sure, FlixBus, it was the response or the answer was really, really quick, and more or less from what I have investigated or I have hear about it is more you can with AI match the position, no? So that's make no sense at all. No?
Okay, so it wasn't a good experience.
No, not really, because I know more or less I have some clues how I can trick the machine, but this doesn't make any sense at all. No?
Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a second person raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm also answering to Werner's point, because since I also work into recruiting, in particular into those ATS, we usually, for the candidates, when they apply to a job vacancy, they can usually see also their percentage score to how similarly and how the affinity of their CV towards the job vacancy. And I realized that most of our clients usually ask to hide that kind of percentage to not discourage the candidate to apply to that position. Because if I see that I have a low percentage of affinity toward the position, maybe I'm not gonna even apply.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but that also makes it a bit more intransparent, right? For the candidates, you don't know like what's going on.
Exactly. It's a common issue.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Okay, I think we're going to move on in the name of time. Thank you, everybody, for entering. I'm going to skip this one. This is just like I wanted to share this slide. I don't know if any of you are on TikTok or on Instagram, but every time I'm there, I get these kinds of reels where people share like tricks and tips to trick the ATS. So I get this a lot. Like a typical one is kind of white fonting, where you add in white font stuff to your CV, which like humans cannot read, except if they copy and paste it in a different color or something. But the machines can read, and there's a lot of other different kind of tips to trick the bots. And I think a lot of them don't work. So kind of as a lot of these tools grow and are used more, also there's kind of a bit of a cottage industry of influencers trying to help you trick the algorithms and trying to help you trick the bots, which I think is interesting, and which we're seeing a lot in kind of this AI field where nobody knows what's going on. Yes. So now I'm going to come to kind of the final part of the session and also of today's course part, which is this lawsuit that I already mentioned. So this is quite recent. The last hearing on it was in May. And very broadly, what happened is that Derek Mobley, he's a Black man from the United States, sued Workday alleging discrimination of a hiring software. And this is part of a class action lawsuit, meaning that like if he wins, it could apply to a lot of people. He's Black, he's over 40, and he has anxiety and depression, which counts as a disability. So those are the three charges: race, age, and disability, which are all like official categories of discrimination, like where you can't discriminate against. He says he's been turned down for more than 100 applications to companies that use the Workday software, in spite of having relevant qualifications for those jobs. And he claims that it's discrimination. So this is the first lawsuit of this kind in the US. I'm not sure actually about Europe. I tried to find some similar cases, but wasn't able to. So if anybody knows of any similar cases, please let me know. You can post them in the chat. It's still ongoing. It's a class action lawsuit. And the reaction of Workday is to reject these claims, because they say the particular laws that this gentleman is using, they apply to employers, and Workday is not an employer. It is a software provider that just provides the software to an employer. So they're arguing that they should not be liable for discrimination because basically the law doesn't apply to them and they're just selling a software. So they're not really doing anything. So that's kind of the situation where we're at right now. I'm not entirely sure like when we'll find out what will happen. But I would kind of from you, like, first of all, like to know, or I was planning on doing this in breakout groups, but I think since the time is advancing, we'll just kind of do it in the big group. I feel like many people are comfortable talking, so that's okay. Well, first of all, my first question would kind of be, who do you think is right? Like, is this man right, or is Workday actually right? Do you have any ideas?
At first glance, oh, sorry, I just jumped in.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I would think that actually Workday has a point. I mean, it's really a legal point of view, you know, who's bound by a certain law, and for employment law, I would say that the employer who actually uses the software would be liable, not the software developer.
Okay. See two more people. Again, if you haven't maybe said anything today, consider speaking up. And as you're considering, please go ahead, Werner.
I will be very resumed. I think it would be interesting that Workday will be held liable. I don't know if it's legal.
Okay. Yeah. You would think, what is your reasoning?
Because otherwise they are in the middle, they produce a problem, but they get off the hook.
Okay, that's a clear point. I don't know how to pronounce your name, Ivor. You're the next on the list. I think you're still muted.
Apologies. I think there's two elements to it. Morally, the Workday might have a responsibility to fix any defects in their algorithms, but legally, I'm with Roberta. I mean, can you for if you're knocked down by a car, do you sue the car manufacturers? If somebody shoots you with a gun, is it the person who made the gun? Is it the gun manufacturer's fault? You know, so legally, I do think Workday have a point. Morally, is something different.
Mm-hmm. So that then means that we would have to find some kind of a different approach to making
If there
Workday
was
accountable.
Yeah, if there was some kind of legislation that held the manufacturers of tools accountable, much like in the EU, it's you know that's coming in, and if the US takes in something along that line, then there's maybe more grounds for suing the manufacturers of the tools.
Okay, great point. Nina, over to you. You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, pretty much agree with Ivor. He kind of mentioned what I also wanted to say. It's, let's say Workday is like a off-the-shelf product, and if there are no set regulatory standards of how these products should be, or what standards they should meet, then yeah, they couldn't be held liable. It's really just the employer who sets the requirements for Workday in it, and then it's just a kind of an ethical question, or just like a in future question to regulate these kind of products and make pretty much standards they need to meet, as for cars, as for medicine, and so on.
Okay, so team regulation. Elisabeth.
I think they could be liable under European data protection law for damages, according to Article 82, for example, because they're a processor and processors can be liable. Obviously, it depends on what legal approach we are taking, and then it depends also if the processing was against GDPR, for example, Article 9, because they probably, if they discriminated him for skin color or ethnicity, they would have processed Article 9 data, probably without having a legal basis. Whereas
Sorry,
I believe in German anti-discrimination law, it would be more difficult because they state right for damages against employers, especially.
Could you, just for the non-lawyers in the room, very briefly say what Article 9 is?
Yeah, sorry. Like Article 9 data are special data categories, like, for example, race and ethnicity. Age does not form part of it, but disability as being health data would also form part of Article 9. So I think this could be a legal way, for example, under European law.
Okay, and there is also the new AI Act, which is going to be enforced, where work is one of the categories that is considered especially high risk, and there are some protections put in place there, but we will still, like, we don't have any experience with it on the ground, so we will still see if it can actually be used. And so until then, I think it will be interesting to see how this kind of plays out in the US, which is kind of also in a moment of, I would say, AI backlash to a certain degree. So we will see. And I mean, just to highlight the whole goal, I think, of this course, but also FINDHR as a project, is not to say that algorithms are bad and that technology is bad, but I mean, we would all like to see a system where hiring becomes less discriminatory, because we already know that hiring, like, a lot of discrimination happens there, right? So the ideal goal would be an algorithm that discriminates less than humans. And this is maybe something like for the tech people in the room, but also for everybody else. I wonder, do you think that like after the input that you saw from Paxi earlier and kind of this situation that we see through this lawsuit, that this is something that we can do, that is feasible, that we can reach? This would be my second question to the room. Yes, Verna.
I think so, but you must train the machine. You must maybe search after people with different backgrounds and train the machine as with as much diversity as possible. And that will be the only way if we keep with machines, no?
Would we be able to pay for it?
Sorry?
Would we be able to pay for it if it becomes very?
I don't know, but I guess that the thing is that if we manage to that the hiring managers and the CEOs realize that this would be good business, could be.
Okay. Okay, I actually just realized that I missed some questions in the chat. So repeat, the question was about this question. So the question would be, do you think that, the aim should be to have hiring software that kind of automatically screens candidates to a certain degree, but is less discriminatory than humans are, because we know that humans also discriminate a lot in the recruiting process. So the question is, do you think that is possible? And maybe kind of what would have to happen there, just to repeat the question. Yes, I think Roberto was first.
Yes, so of course the AI Act in Europe will help with that, as we were saying, and we probably will need some auditing mechanisms for algorithms, and first some standards, for example, for the development of this algorithm in a fair manner, like with some with the inclusion in the programming of these algorithms of, for example, explainable AI methods and fairness measures during the development of the softwares, and then after that auditing, like periodically.
Okay, so kind of if there is a framework in place around it, then maybe it could be possible of more governance. Okay, and Andreas.
Yeah, I think you could actually use it in the other way, that you have a human to select first and then evaluate this decision by a machine. I think machines could be built in that way, to make clear where there is maybe a discrimination or bias involved. In reality, of course, it's not being done yet, at least not on a big scale. It's all about efficiency, I think, in the end, and that's what counts for most employers, to be honest. And if they get lots of applications, they just want to have a short list, and that's the problem in the end, because even if you have a human in the loop for the last 10 or so applicants, all the others will not be seen by a human. And I don't know if anybody, there's a very good book on how HR and AI systems are being used in HR by Hilke Schellmann, the algorithm. And actually what she says is, in the end, most of these tools don't work, actually. And many HR people know this. But for them, it's just important not to have this huge number of applications, and they're just happy if there's anything how to reduce them. In the end, sometimes you could just take them out randomly and you would have the same results. So I think it's I think there are two sides to these tools that employers have to be aware of. One is about discrimination. The other one is about the validity of the systems. Do they actually work? And I'm quite skeptical about that.
Yeah, great point. Foreshadowing, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Hilke Schellmann's work tomorrow in the third session. Okay, I see 3 more people, and because I promised that 4 more people, I promised that we would stop after half an hour. I think I'm going to stop the list there at these 4. So please go ahead. I think Marcella, you're first.
Yeah, sorry. No, I'm very optimistic. I think I've been involved closely with a lot of really smart people working on algorithm development and just using a lot of the same techniques that we use to audit, but understanding, you know, what we can change in the algorithms to have the effect. Of course, obviously, we're always going to be we're always tuning an algorithm to a certain target, so it's going to depend a lot on the discussions as well as of what do we want to tune it with, what do we think is fair, etc. But I do think there are ways to reinforce a lot of the human in the loop that's been said, also to reinforce and teach algorithms to take fairness into account. So I do see a lot of progress in that direction, and I think we can get there for sure.
Okay, that's good. Some optimism. Yannick.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if I share the optimism here. I guess that the problem mainly remains for me that we need to audit systems and even proprietary and closed systems. But I think even if we had access, the one central problem remains that we need balanced data sheets for testing models, and those are hard to come by. They are hard to mock up. We can't simply put random data in there. We need well, test data sheets with marginalized groups that are represented equally, so we can first make visible that AI systems discriminate. In my opinion, I think it's very important that we do or that we try to make AI less discriminatory, but I think the main effort should be to well, debias humans as well.
Yes, great contribution. Thank you. I think Carolina.
Okay, I will give maybe a different perspective. I think all the perspectives are valid, but the question is the legal perspective. We can say we have regulations that forbidden discriminations and so on and so forth. It's valid, and if you want to take legal action, it can take years. So this is not the solution because we need more short-term solutions, because we can read, we can research, and we have countless cases worldwide in recruitment and selection in health that many people are being heavily discriminated when artificial intelligence tools are used, because we are perpetuating, humans are perpetuating and transfer biases and stereotypes when building these algorithms. We can audit them, yes, but it seems that it's not enough. It doesn't solve the issue at all, and we all can, it's quite relatable, and we have empathy. Maybe all of us have been through this experience of being negatively impacted by AI tools in health, in recruitment and systems. So I think the question is a little bit more deeper, and we need to think about, okay, maybe in this recruitment and selection process and these bigger companies worldwide, they need some kind of automation. We can agree on that. But I think maybe we need to think about another tools and another solutions, and maybe to start to discuss about AI ethics and think about what are the limits of the usage of AI. And according to specific scenarios, we need probably to take the discussion further and deeper in, okay, should we use artificial intelligence tools? And if we need to, should we use in specific situations or not? We need to use AI in all the situations. And if we need so to automation in these recruitment and selection process, what are the limits of the usage, and probably to develop another kind of tools to help us to alleviate this negative impact in people's lives. Because in the end of the day, it's about we are being discriminated in selection and recruitment process by biases, by stereotypes, and so on and so forth. But we don't have a solution for this. And we all feel, and we all can relate or hear some stories of friends or family, or to read or to make research on internet of a lot of cases worldwide that people are being negatively treated and not treated fairly by these AI tools and solutions. So maybe it's about the discussion, to take the discussion to the next level about if we need to use or not AI at all, and if we need to use it, what are the limits and what kind of another tools we can use to improve a little bit all of this in the end of the day.
Okay, so a call to implement limitations and AI ethics. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to our final contribution from FINDHR.
Yeah, I will try to be short as much as possible. So basically, I kind of very much agree with the person speaking before. And first of all, the issue is that we are kind of like the question, can we de-bias? Can we like totally eliminate discrimination from the machines or systems? It is kind of like to say, can we totally eliminate murders? Can we totally eliminate people committing crimes? And we can't, but we can make better like decisions in order to eliminate that. So, and from this perspective, so we should not target 100 elimination of bias, de-bias, discrimination, or not using AI, or like somehow unrealistic goals, first of all. Second of all, like the discussions of AI Act and all these like discussions about legality and everything, like we still live like an outdated like legal system that we kind of discuss, and we are like very much behind of like what's happening now. But a concrete, like from the concrete perspective, like I can see like there are not very much like even studies about like literally numerical measuring of bias. Like what exactly, like can we concretely like give numbers from numerous studies measuring bias, discrimination, or on which kind of group it affects? Like we need more numbers. We need to like transfer these abstract discussions into numbers, and then from that, the people who are programmers, they would know like what kind of how to diversify better the data, how to like cross-check or make data augmentation, or how to work with the data like in order to de-bias or like eliminate that bias. From also like from the legal perspective, like it is kind of like very similar like discussion like with data privacy. Like when data privacy came, everyone freaked out. Now we have data privacy officer in all companies in Europe and whatever. Like I think like the very similar principles should be applied like with this AI as well. And there need to be like very much like more monitoring, more accountability, not like kicking the ball into the like the on the field of the other people, like HR saying like the company saying like it's the fault of the software developers. The software developer company says like no, it's the fault of like the people who uses AI. Like it's like ball kicking like from one side to the other. And because there is like this lack of transparency, HRs are not transparent. HRs like are not liable for how like the extent to what the extent they're using these tools. And so the legal tools must be very much like really augmented, like extensively. Like there should be more monitoring, accountability, and transparency. And there must be like an officer, like a data privacy officer, like in the companies, who is monitoring independently, like how those tools are used actually. So, and maybe like AI Act kind of touched upon this point, like if this ATS affects your livelihood, potentially you not being able getting the job, and hence getting money, hence your level of life is lower. AI Act kind of considers that, but in practice, it only very strictly limits high-level AI tools, but not like ATS kind of system. It still remains a bubble. So maybe it should go further and set limits on what actually ATS can do and cannot do, and very like strict limits on, okay, I need engineers, so no lawyers that don't have engineer degree can apply. So like very like set limit somehow a threshold or where it stops. And so that's
thank
my
you, Frida.
point,
I think I think we've got your point, also going a little bit in the direction of limitations, and also a suggestion to kind of like institutionalize this more, looking at data protection and how that has worked there. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for this discussion. I hoped you enjoyed it. We will continue these case studies tomorrow morning. We're starting at 9 o'clock, even though it's a Saturday, as Paxi said, very, very committed, everybody. We will continue to move through the kind of recruiting process. So today we looked at job ads and CV scanning, and tomorrow we will look at interview AI supported interviews, video interviews, and audio interviews, where we will also talk a lot about the work of Hilke Schermann that has already been mentioned. And in the last session, we will be talking a bit more about what happens when you're actually in the company. So moving one step further from the recruiting process to being in the company, which kind of will round out the whole process. And yeah, once again, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and look forward to more discussions. And yeah, have a great evening, everybody.